here. Okay,
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Here we go. We are recording. Go ahead and mute there, Ravi, and we will start our Wednesday session, our Namaste experience. Speaking of experiences, you can see here, this is my experience right now. This is my lovely little converted van where I can live and sleep. It's actually bigger than the home I have there at Namaste Village, which is we call the cave. It's just a tiny little space, barely big enough for a twin bed. And I am here. Let me see if I can turn the camera around. Maybe not. Oh, okay. Hopefully this has been recording the whole time. I'm here in a little town called Avon, Montana. I was able just to pull in here and get a decent signal. So hopefully you can hear me, see me, and we can dive right in. So welcome to you all. I don't have the prayer in front of me that we do for the prayer for the awakened, but let's just hold still for a moment and we can feel the prayer. Maybe it's better this way, just to feel the energy of being awake now, claiming love now, claiming that I am whole, I am filled with light this very moment. This is the essence of the prayer for the awakened, the truth that is forever true, the reality that is forever real, which is real and whole within me now. So let's just spend a few more seconds feeling that wholeness, feeling that vibration. And then we'll dive right in. So we've been for the last number of days looking at and discussing this beautiful book that was written in the 15th century, The Imitation of Christ. And yesterday, I was reminded of a parallel teaching that I wanted to share that was originally shared by someone that I dearly love and hold and just have always had great reverence for. In fact, if you look at the Namaste Village picture there, you'll see, of course, the beautiful painting, which is the chair of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And then to the left, you'll see Francis, and on the right, you'll see Saint Clare of Assisi. That's who we're going to talk about a little bit today, Saint Clare of Assisi. And just 4 words. That's how simple this can be. 4 words that she asked us to embrace, to embody. And so this also actually comes from a letter that Clare wrote from a series of about 3 or 4 letters to a woman named Agnes of Prague. I love the story of Agnes of Prague. She was literally a princess. She was the daughter of the King of Bohemia and was perhaps the most sought after woman and bride in all of Europe. Kings and princes were literally lining up to try and secure her hand in marriage, because not only was she said to be remarkably beautiful, but being the daughter of the King of Bohemia, this was going to be a major political feat and move to bring different kingdoms together. And yet Agnes at the same time felt this deep longing and yearning for the divine and didn't have much interest in being sold off in marriage. And this is when she began to write letters to Clare in Assisi. And Clare would write letters back to her, telling her about the holiness of her decision. Ultimately, Agnes left the life she was living. She started her own Poor Clare convent and became a Poor Clare nun herself. She gave her life to love. And so Clare would write these beautiful letters to her, even romantic letters, talking about the holiness of giving her life to the beloved in such a real concrete way. And in these letters, there were four things that that Claire shared with Agnes, and they were to consider. Hold on, let me look here. I want to make sure I get this right. No, that's right. The first one is to gaze, and then consider, and then to contemplate and imitate. Gaze, consider, contemplate, imitate. So what was she referring to? The first thing you need to know is that St. Clare spent 40 years praying in front of a particular crucifix, which is to this day very famous. It's called the Cross of San Damiano. And the Cross of San Damiano in this tiny chapel, which ultimately became the home of Clare and her sisters. This cross, when Francis was searching for an answer, asking for direction, longing to be shown the path that he should walk as everything was changing within him, he was gazing at this cross in this tiny chapel that was falling to ruin, and it came to life in front of his eyes. And you may know this story. Jesus on the cross said, "Francis, can't you see that my church is falling to ruin? Rebuild my church." And ultimately, after they had rebuilt the church, the bishop there in Assisi granted Clare and her sisters permission to live there. And for hundreds of years, this was the primary center for this charism of love and prayer and contemplation that Clare gave the world. And so for 40 years, she would look up at this same cross, the cross that had come alive for Francis. And these four words became her spiritual practice. She would gaze upon the Christ. Gaze upon the Christ. That was all. No thought, no motivation, simply to gaze. And then she would come to the second step, which was to contemplate, or to consider, rather. To consider the possibility that the Christ was alive and awake through love in everyone in every moment. To consider the possibility, just as we have been sharing for this past week through the imitation of Christ, that the Christ is not simply referring to a man who lived 2,000 years ago, but an active embodiment now, the extension of the love and the loveliness of God right here, right now. So she would gaze upon the Christ, consider this now experience, and then she would contemplate. She would just hold this in her heart in prayer. She would sit for hours every day in front of the cross of San Damiano, and she would contemplate this great mystery that the extension of God's love is happening right now in this moment through each and every single one of us, whether we acknowledge or know it or not. As the wonderful Richard Rohr always says, the Christ is just another word for everything, and we'll add another word for everyone. So once again, to gaze, to consider, to contemplate, and then Clare said, to imitate. What do we do when we stand up? What would she do after she left that chapel and rejoined her sisters? She would imitate the Christ. We talk about this often in these sessions. We sometimes use the word to pretend you're awake. It's the exact same experience, to imitate the Christ in order to embody the energy of that Christhood. And in doing so, when you imitate something that you already are, that is already whole and true within you, the experience of that truth is inevitable. So once again, as Claire would look up at this cross of San Damiano, she would gaze, she would consider, she would contemplate, and then she would imitate. But today, we are going to add one more. Not that Claire had anything wrong or that there was anything that she left out. It's just that we have now come to a point in our own conscious evolution, our own spiritual awakening, that we are ready for the final step. Not just to imitate, but to activate. This is the call before us now, to activate the energy of the Christ within us. As we gaze, as we consider, as we contemplate and imitate, we now activate so that the Christ becomes alive through and as each one of us. This is the only reason you are here, and you are ready for this. Those few words, you are ready, are the only thing that we need to fully, completely accept. To say, I am ready, means to acknowledge that the Christ is ready to step forward through and as me, that my life is so dedicated to this energy, to this extension, that there's nothing left for me to even imitate, because I've come full circle through the gazing upon the Christ, through the considering the possibility of the Christ in this moment, through the contemplation, which is to take it to the deepest part of who I am. And then the imitation, this is what we have been doing. This is what we have been called to share. But finally, now that we have done all of these, we activate. The Christ has been activated. The love of God has been activated within us. And as this activation takes hold, everything aligns perfectly as it is perfect. We look at every situation, every person, and we use those three great words, no matter what. We see them as the extension of the love and the loveliness of God. Yesterday, we talked about humility, the importance of not just saying, I am that, because it is the ego that hears this message first and claims this experience. But it is through humility that we can come to the point where we can follow the advice of Claire, where we can gaze humbly, where we can consider, where we can contemplate in the deepest way possible, imitate, and then finally activate this holy Christ, which is who you are, which is who you've always been. So with that, I know that Vicky loves talking about Claire as well. She's been to Assisi many times. We talk about, it's funny because Claire is so often left out of the discussion. Francis so often gets all the attention. But Claire, at the same time as Francis, was as impactful, if not even more impactful and strong. And there were at least 2 times when Claire saved Assisi from ruin, from being completely destroyed by armies. 2 times in her life that she stopped this. Once with the Holy Roman Emperor, when there was a great dispute going on between the papacy and the emperor, and another time when Assisi was about to be taken over by the Saracen army. Claire stood strong because she had followed all these steps, and even though she had not recognized, as we are, this final step of activation, it was fully activated within her to the point that she could stand in front of armies and they would turn around in the face of such grace and holiness. So Vicky, that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you. and let you share whatever you'd like to about those 4 things from Claire, and of course, the final step of activation.
Thank you, James. Oh, I'm so excited. I love this. Being an old monk myself, I love this. So, first I want to say on that's the training. And also I want to say this is very much where Thomas à Kempis took his inspiration from Francis and Claire, because he came years after them. And certainly Francis and Claire were the demonstration of the life of Christ in their present day. But where we find ourselves now, so let's take the gaze, the consider, the contemplate, the imitate. Those are the steps of releasing judgment. When we gaze upon something, when we consider it, when we open our mind and let our mind receive what it is we're gazing upon, we come into an experience of knowing that we cannot figure it out and judge it by its appearances. What happens naturally is we come into an inner resonance. This is energy again. We come into an inner resonance with the essence of what it is we're gazing upon. We come into the resonance of love. And the training, the mind training, the discipline, the imitation of Christ, whatever tradition we're in, the mind training is a letting go of our assessment, our judgment, our measuring, our figuring, our deciding what to do, what to say, where to go, how to do, what our goals are. It's the letting go of all of that in favor of this open-hearted and open-minded stance that is full of grace. When we gaze, it's what today is Wednesday. Holy Wednesday at Namaste Village is a day of silence. It's a day of allowing, of contemplating, of gazing. And what we come into, if we let go of the measurements that we've been having, the assessments we've been having, the judgments, essentially, they're all judgment. When we live without those judgments, we live in this natural flow of ease and of grace. And that's what the imitation of Christ, the discipline, the mindfulness brings us to. So it brings us to that threshold where we are, as you said, and as the emissary said, we are prepared. There has never been anything that interfered with our always being who we are. We already are the love of our Creator. We are the holiness, the child of God. We are the living Christ, the living divinity. We have and always have been that. We are ready today to accept it and let it be active in us. Let it activate us. And those 2 examples of Claire are great examples of allowing love to stand. The most courageous thing any of us can do in today to activate this consciousness is to stand in love in the face of fear, no matter what it seems to look like, without lifting a hand of defense. That's activation. Without lifting a hand of defense to change, to do, to correct, but simply stand in grace and in peace in the knowing of who we are. The activation depends on us knowing who we are. That essentially is what true humility is. And Jean reminded me, and Pierre always reminded us, who are right in this room, that true humility is the acceptance of our divinity. That's what true humility is. And then the willingness to let that identity be fully accepted within us by letting go of all of the adjustments we would make on our own that thinks it knows something other than love. When we know the appearances, when we've been gazing and contemplating, we immediately come to that experience of knowing that it's the essence, it's the energy, it's the vibration, the music that we're gazing upon and that we're hearing and that we're feeling and that we're joining with, not the appearance, whether it be a rosebud or a brother in front of us. When we truly gaze, we open up to that experience of life, love, being our only reality, and we necessarily become one with it because we already are one with it. When we activate humility in the recognition that whatever the appearances are, they are not what they seem to be, that's enough. They're not what they seem to be. And when we have been established, literally established in love as our only reality, as what divinity is, we are active in our life just as Claire was, as that presence of love that's like an open portal that allows all things to flow through us. And what isn't love dissolves, like those ice cubes. What isn't love dissolves in the face of love and grace that knows itself to be that. And we are each called to do that. Wherever it is we hesitate, whether we get scared about money, about relationships, about health, about the government, about the climate, wherever it is, we have looked and thought the appearances seemed real and threatened us. That is the very point of activation. If we can look at it with a gaze, behold it. That's what Joel Goldsmith would say. Behold, rather than defend, rather than figure out, rather than problem solve. Behold and witness to the life of Christ that is everything, like Richard Rohr says. It is everything. And if it is everything, what would I ever need to correct about what already is wholly itself in a shared divinity? It is only a thinking mind and a separated mind that would think it would problem solve what needs no solving. In the willingness to let everything be and gaze upon and join with the heart of what is in everything around us, the points where we hesitate, where we withdraw, where we want to be defensive or we want to solve a problem, those constriction points are the very points where we can activate today in ourselves what it is that still frightens us and stand beholding in love and allowing the grace of love to dissolve what isn't, and allowing the passage of love to continue and extend and expand through us. And then it expands and extends through our holy vision. We want to activate our Christ identity, our divinity. It is in our vision. The world is saved through our vision of seeing there is nothing but the love of God. Only love, only God, only now.
Amen.
Thank you, Brother James. Thanks,
Oh.
everybody. You guys, I love you all. Thank you.
Oh man, we love you too. Thank you, Vicky. Brilliant, absolutely wonderful. And I want to do something rather unexpected, that the person I'm going to call on now has no idea that I'm about to call on her, but I saw that she's in the room, and that is Sister Claire, who is a Franciscan nun in England, who joins us almost every day. And I can't think of any person more suited to share a few final words, if she will. I know I'm calling on her very unexpectedly, so I apologize for that, Claire. But when Sister Claire is in the room, we have to hear a little something from her. So Claire, if you would choose to unmute and just share with us what this means to you, what this connection with St. Claire means, and anything else you'd like to share about this lesson.
Hi.
There she is. Good afternoon or good evening, I guess, for you.
Good afternoon from the UK.
So good to see you, dear sister. What would you like to share with us about our wonderful St. Claire?
Well, when I was thinking about imitation, it struck me that Francis and Claire followed Christ so closely that the word imitation doesn't even go all the way to describe how closely they became united with Christ. To me, the word inhabitation sums it up very well, because it was like they put on Christ, they inhabited Christ, and Francis himself received the wounds of Christ in his body. he was so closely united with Christ. So I think that when we inhabit Christ, we put on Christ, then we also begin to activate Christ in our lives. As you were saying, we have to present Christ in a visible form to the world by the way that we live, so that we become the visible images of Christ in the world. And also what Vicky said about gazing on Christ, we have to release our judgment. That struck me as well, because when we gaze at something, it's like when a little child or a baby gazes, it is without judgment, and we are completely open to letting that object of our gaze become united with us, to come right into us. And to do that, we have to release our judgment. So that struck me as being very true. Thank you for that, Vicky. And thank you, James.
Oh, Claire, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I took a peek and saw you here in the room. And that is so beautiful. And you're so correct. Claire and Francis both completely inhabited the Christ, which is something that St. Paul called us to do in one of his letters, to put on the Christ, to put it on as if this is a cloak or a garment that we wear that demonstrates who we are. And so I think Claire's movement into that inhabitation, where we realize that we are the living Christ, and that we share that by seeing that. That's the other thing that Vicky talks so beautifully about, that it is through our vision of seeing the Christ in everyone, in every situation, no matter what, that we realize that within us. And we can call that by other names. If the word Christ doesn't work for you, call it whatever you want. Call it love, because that's really what it is. It's just the full, unadulterated experience and expression of love itself. So thank you, dear Claire. Let me see, what time is it? Do we have, well, Calico, if you have a minute and you want to share a little something to wrap us up and put a little cherry on this Sunday, please feel free.
I will, because this is such a perfect session for me. To talk about contemplation and activation. After my little episode at Walmart the other day, I really took on, because I've held him in my mind as an angry man. That's my interpretation of a Christ. And so I had to really sit with that and see, what is it that I'm to learn from that I want to call the Christ an angry man. And so I really sat with it. And what I got was, I was a call for help. Because one of the things I've had to deal with in this parable is fear of angry men. And so I had to really get, there are no angry men. There's only a block to seeing the anger that blocks me from seeing the Christ. And so the activation now, and I really got it, because, when he was done and there was a pause and I just said, thank you, I thought, okay, let's look at this whole scenario very deeply. And I thanked him, because I really I called him in. I called him in to heal me from seeing anyone as angry. It's impossible. It's impossible. Everyone is perfect. And we're all either a call for love or a call for love, or we're extending love. And so that's been my call for love my whole life, is to heal this anger that I saw anger. And it's like, by really sitting and contemplating with this the past few days, I really get the activation is to embrace everyone, no matter what the emotions coming out, just embrace them. That's my lesson. It's only a lesson I would learn. And if I'm getting hooked by anger in someone, that's the anger in me that needs to be healed by allowing myself to see them as the Christ. So I'm still in process with this, and all I can say is this is a great topic.
Mhm.
Thank you,
Yes.
Claire and Vicki and James.
Oh, thank you to all of you. What a beautiful session this has been. I had no idea. I was thinking about this yesterday, and I thought this would be a perfect follow-up to what we've been sharing with the imitation of Christ, to gaze upon the Christ, wherever it is, however it shows up in any moment, and in me, to consider the possibility that the Christ is right in front of me, in me, all around me, to contemplate this, to take time out every day to just pray and to contemplate the activation of this. And then through the imitation, to not only activate, but to embody, to really fully embody my own call to Christhood by seeing through my vision that the Christ is all there is. It's the same as saying that only love is real. And to that we say, Amen,
Amen.
Amen,
Amen.
Amen,
Amen.
y punto.
Punto.
Much love to you all. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Calico. And I'll find a little spot tomorrow where we can do this again.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Love you
Happy
all.
Wednesday.